Oh, great. Okay, so we're back. I just had dinner. It's still the Day of the Dead, a couple hours later. So, we're going to talk about Samuel Beckett. He's the author of, this is a book, Collector Shortest Place. A lot of the books are on Grove Press, and I have my Grove Press number up there, but I'm not going to get it. I'm too lazy. And his most famous book is Waiting for Godot, number 33. Reading Beckett for the first time is an experience like no other in modern literature. Paul Auster. And there's a lot of versions of Waiting for Godot. I'm going to read from his novel, Murphy, here, which I have. I have a lot of his books. Beckett, I suggest reading the trilogy. I'm more of a fan of the novels and the poetry, but the theater stuff is pretty good too. He was born in 1906 and he died in 1989. Was an Irish novelist, dramatist, short story writer, director, poet, and translator. His literary and theatrical work featured bleak, impersonal, and tragic comedy experiences of life, often coupled with black comedy and nonsense. His work became increasingly minimalist as his career progressed, involving more aesthetic and linguistic experimentations with stream of consciousness techniques, repetition, self-reference. So he lived in Paris for most of his life, moved there in the 30s, met uh, James Joyce. But his earlier books are the more Irish ones, or, his early stuff. Yeah, what was, you know, for a long time, when people didn't really know about him, um, he wrote the trilogy like in the 50s, or maybe during the war, but it was published in the 50s. But he had Murphy's like 38, Watt is 43. He had the essay Dante Bruno Vico Joyce 1929. His book on Proust, More Pricks and Kicks, came out in 34. And he had a long poem, Horoscope, and Echo's Bones came out pretty early. So by the time uh, before the war, people didn't even know. People probably pretty much gave up on him, and like seeing like some of the people are winning the Nobel Prize, it's really shocking that Beckett won in '69, because like nobody like Beckett has won it. Maybe Alfred Jelinek is the only anybody that's person that's like similar. But let me read a little bit of it. Murphy. The sun shone, having no alternative, on the nothing new. Murphy sat out of it as though he were free in a mew in West Brompton for what might have been 6 months. He had eaten, drunk, slept, and put his clothes on and off in a medium-sized cage of northwestern aspect, commanding an unbroken view of medium-sized cages of southeastern aspect. Soon he will have to make other arrangements, for the Mew had been condemned. Soon he would have to buckle to and start eating, drinking, sleeping, and putting on his clothes on and off in quite alien surroundings. He sat naked in the rocking chair of undressed teak, guaranteed not to crack, warp, shrink, corrode, or creak at night. The rocking chair, that is. It was his own. It never left him. The corner in which he sat was curtained off from the sun. The poor old man, the sun, the poor old man, the poor old son, in the Virgin again for the billionth time. Seventh scars held him in position. Two fastened his shins to the rocker, one his thighs to the seat. two his breast and belly to the back, one his wrist to the strut behind. Only the most local movements were possible. Sweat poured off him, tightening the thongs. The breath was not perceptible. The eyes, cold and unwavering as a gull's, stared up at the iridescence splashed over the cornice, molding, shrinking, and fading. Somewhere a cuckoo clock, having struck between 20 and 30, became the echo of the shriek cry, which now entered the mew, gave quid pro quo directly. These were the sights and sounds that he did not like. They detained him in the world to which they belonged, but not he, as he fondly hoped. He wandered dimly. What was breaking up in sunlight? What wares were being cried dimly, very dimly? He sat in the chair in this way because it gave him pleasure. First, it gave him bodily pleasure. It appeased his body. Then it set him free in his mind, for it was not until his body was appeased that he could come alive in his mind, as described in section 6. And life in his mind gave him pleasure, such pleasure that pleasure was not the word. Murphy had lately studied under a man in Cork called Neary. This man, at the time, could stop his heart more or less whenever he liked, and kept it stopped within reasonable limits for as long as he liked. This rare faculty, acquired after years of application somewhere north of the Nerbudda, he exercised frugally, reserving it for situation irksome beyond endurance, as when he wanted a drink and could not get one, or fell among gales and could not escape, or felt the pangs of hopeless sexual inclination. So yeah, so it kind of moves pretty slow. There's Murphy, and he's hanging around his friend Neary and Murphy. So like just to talk about a little bit of the book. Let's see. Let's go back. Let's see what. Well, let's go. To, what do we got here? Okay, 7 minutes. Let's go to a bit of a summary. What happens to describe what happens in this novel is to describe the attempts of the protagonist to avoid having anything happen at all, and the attempts of on the part of the other characters to make something happen to Murphy. Murphy lives by the principle of least activity. His greatest ambition is to tie himself to his beloved teak wood rocker and rock himself in the state of blissful non-being, a retreat in which his body is vacated in order to free the mind for endless roamings in actual and virtual. Taking his cue from Balakwa, the Dantean figure, punished in purgatory for indifferent procrastination, Murphy tries to do nothing, but inevitably does something despite his best efforts. He dies. So this book it takes place mostly in London, but you kind of there's the mention of Cork and West Brompton. Like that was like one of the first places I went to when I went to London. I always seem to like lurk around that area. It's kind of like around Earl's Court, around that area. So every visit to London seems kind of Beckettian. So I forgot that this book kind of takes place in London, but the Watt just seems more French. Okay, so stated baldly. However, the plot is simple. Murphy, engaged in Miss Cunahan, goes from Dublin to London ostensibly to set himself up in a lucrative occupation. After too long an absence, Miss Cunahan and her new lover, Neary, Murphy's former tutor, hire the dull-witted Cooper to find Murphy, prove either his death or infidelity, and report back. Murphy has, meanwhile, fallen in love, if that is the word, with Celia, a sensitive and long-suffering prostitute who begs him to find honest work. Murphy's avoidance of commitment carries the novel through half its length before Murphy stumbles on a position at Magdalen Mental Mercy Seat, as a night attendant. Having found kindred spirits, the race of people he had long since despaired of finding, Murphy deserts Celia when Cooper, Neary, and Miss Coonahan, joined by yet another lover, Wiley, finally move in with Celia to wait for Murphy's return. The novel moves to its absurd climax and ending, in which Murphy is accidentally burned to death when someone turns on the gas to his room instead of flushing the toilet. Cooper has only to get rid of the cremated remains of Murphy, which he does in a barroom brawl that leaves them spilled among the sand, the beer, the butts, the glass, the matches, the spit, the vomit. The narration moves back and forth from chapter to chapter between Murphy and a situation with Celia and Neary, Coonahan. Cooper campaign to find him. The Murphy Celia chapters are more internal, more analytic from moment to moment, while the action chapters are full of discourse, pithy sentences, and economy of expression. So, so the they're kind of, yeah, they're in search of Murphy. So in that way, it's a bit like Watt. I'd have to like read Watt again, but for sure, it's a bit like the trilogy. It's a bit like where I mean, originally I was gonna talk about maybe Malloy and Malone Dies, which Malloy is obviously a similar, narrative where they're searching. One person searches for Malloy, the whole novel. Let's see, how's it say? Yeah, yeah. So, but it's more. I mean, it's more written kind of like in a nouveau roman type style. The Jacques Moran is looking for Malloy in part two of the book. The part the part one is mainly Malloy and just kind of his mind and what he's thinking of, and very similar to Murphy. And the second part is a private detective, Jacques Moran, who's looking for him. So let's see. Let's go back to his novels here, Murphy. What they kind of describe it. Okay, the plot of Murphy follows a eponymous seedy solipsist. Yeah, he doesn't. He it's a very, whereas it's different from Malloy. He's more of a philosophy student than Malloy. Malloy has nothing of that going on. He lives in an apartment in West Brompton. The novel opens with the protagonist having tied himself naked to a rocking chair. It seems to be a habit for Murphy, who's carrying out ritual attempts to enter a near, if not total, non existent state of being, possibly something akin to sensory deprivation. His meditation is juxtaposed with conversations he has with a friend and mentor, Neary, an eccentric from Cork who has ability to stop his heart, an ability or condition which Neary calls apmonia, the Greek word for harmony, sometimes referred to as isonomy or the attunement. The book states that this is the meditation between extremes of heart attack and heart failure, allowing Neary to enter a state of survivable cardiac arrest at will. An early conversation between Neary and Murphy is spurred by some type of revelation that Neary receives during one of these routine heart-stopping sessions. And the two are prompted to discuss their respective romantic lives. Murphy admits that there's Miss Coonahan, though their relationship is unclear. Murphy's meditation is further interrupted by a call from his current lover, Celia Kelly, who became a prostitute following the deaths of her parents at a young age. Murphy has proposed to Celia shortly after meeting her, but they have so far been able to wed due to lack of money. Celia spent every penny she earned, and Murphy earned no pennies. And Murphy's conflicted feelings, the part of him that he hated, craved for Celia, the part that she loved shriveled up and at the thought of her. Celia finds Murphy in his flat, still tied naked to the rocking chair, which he has somehow overturned. She rushes to assist him, noticing a large pink birthmark on his right buttocks for the first time. She urges him to find a job, finally telling him that if he doesn't, she will leave him. Murphy reluctantly agrees to try. He begins working as a nurse in North London, finding the insanity of the patients an appealing alternative to conscious existence. Murphy gone to ground in London lodgings, and then in the hospital is pursued by a ragtag troop of eccentrics from his own country, each with their own often conflicting motivations. Neri, a practitioner of Eastern mysticism, seeks Murphy as a love rival and then as a compatible friend in the absence of all others. Miss Coonahan's attachment to Murphy is romantic. Among Wiley's motivations, Miss Coonahan is perhaps the strongest. And Cooper, Neri's simpleton servant and fixer, joins the trail for money, alcohol, and to serve his master. And there's a lot of there's also a lot of chess in this. I think there on YouTube. They have the Murphy chess game because Murphy plays a chess with Mr. Endon, and I think the actual moves are in on YouTube. So if you look at Samuel Beckett chess, I think there's the chess game, and so moving between Ireland and England, this novel is caustically satirical at the expense of the Irish Free State, which had recently banned Beckett's More Pricks and Kicks. The astrologer consulted by Murphy is famous throughout this civilized world, and the Irish Free State for Irish girl Murphy and Myra. Mrs. Coonahan was quite exceptionally anthropoid, and in the general post office site of the 1916 rising, Neri assaults the buttocks of Oliver Shepherd's statue of a mythic Irish hero, Cuchulainn. The statue, in fact, possesses no buttocks. So, let's see. Oh, yeah. Among many thinkers to influence Murphy's mind-body debate are Spinoza, Descartes, and little-known Belgian occasionalist Arnold Genelix, which is a big. And Arnold Genelix, it's almost like only people that are like hardcore in the back of like know who this guy is. Like he's like the guy. He's like a student of Descartes, So if you're really into philosophy, you know who Arnold Genelix is, because he's pretty. Let's see, what did he say? Despite Genelix's thesis that God cannot act without an instrumentality of variety, he was strongly attacked in the early 18th century, for example, as a Spinozaist. The criticism had originated from Christian Thomasius in 1710. The attack from Andala was on behalf of true Cartesians, classing Genelix as pernicious with blah, blah, blah. Was also attacked by. So he said, I mean, Descartes, I think was a religious guy, but I mean, I guess there was a religious split between pro-religious Cartesians and Genelix was like. So there's people. I've read some of the stuff like Genelix and Beckett, kind of like being sort of related, and kind of like that's what he was kind of into. It's always good to bring some new stuff into your books and stuff. So that's enough. Beckett, Murphy, I suggest you read it. Definitely. It's if you want to read a lot of Beckett, I would start here before I read the plays. Murphy, and then maybe to there's another book. There's a book that Grove put out that's a lot like this. I think it's even edited by S.E. and Gontarski, but it's collected shorter prose along with the plays and stuff. So these are plays. And yeah, Beckett, definitely one of my favorites. Haven't really read them. I should probably read them more often. I mean, so yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see. We'll talk more about Beckett in the future. Definitely. Maybe we'll do another one about Beckett. Okay. Take care, everyone.